so Minato will be the Otsutsuki part of Naruto's genes, whilst Kushina stays the same. For Minato's backstory, he was originally born on Earth with the mission to destroy the planet, but after his parents had to abort their mission with an emergency mission somewhere in the universe and completely forgot about their baby son, who was not alone stranded on Earth. The only thing he had was a fruit clutched in his hand. Minato was still the same boy as in the original in terms of personality, just that his skin was astoundingly white and his hair was a grayish blue, but he didn't have any horns, unlike his future son, and everything went similarly to normal, up until Obito's attack. Now, as Minato had immense power, he would destroy Obito with ease, but he felt something in the man he was fighting. This was no Madara. Suddenly Minato blitzed toward the man and lifted his mask with such ease, but underneath this mask was something which would shock Minato greatly. The shinobi who used to be in his team, Obito Uchiha, was standing in front of him with an angry expression. But I thought you died, Minato said, taking a step backward. He had always carried tremendous guilt in his heart for what had happened to Obito, and so seeing Obito again made him so relieved that he completely forgot about the situation and ran to hug the boy. But what happened then was quite a surprise to Minato. A blade was struck right through the fourth's chest, right into the heart, as Obito jumped back. Too late, Sensei. Maybe you should have given the name White Flash some credit by coming to save me earlier. He spat on Minato, then Obito disappeared as he felt disgusted by the attempt Minato made and completely forgot about his greatest weapon, the Nine-Tails, who was then freed from Obito's control. Minato was bleeding out, as even an Otsutsuki couldn't recover a wound to the heart like that, but then he thought of his wife, his son, who had just been born. It would be unfair to let his son die by the Nine-Tails' hand, so he got up from the ground, blood spilling everywhere. I'll protect them, and teleported back to where his wife and son still were. The Nine-Tails was absolutely fuming and destroying everything, and suddenly stabbed Minato and Kushina right through their chest. As Minato knew his son would be able to handle it, even though he was still a baby, he sealed the full Nine-Tails inside of him, and a mystery chakra source, until finally succumbing to his wounds, and dying. 4 years have passed since that incident. Naruto's life has been nothing but absolute torture. The boy was, of course, extremely powerful since birth, however, the boy never used it, as he had the control nor the urge to use it against the people who even beat him at times. But he just poured all the frustration from the hatred the villagers had for him because of the things sealed inside of him into his studies, making him an incredible ninja even at his age. However, that wasn't the only thing that made the villagers hate him. Naruto's appearance was unusual to say the least. He had slightly blue hair, normal skin, but horns growing out of his head, and not just that. He had this very familiar white eyes of the Hyuga clan, the Byakugan, but he wasn't a Hyuga. What was wrong with this boy? One day, a man walked up to Naruto and, out of nowhere, pulled out a kunai and put it to Naruto's neck. You! The man held himself back from saying what he wanted to, as that would be breaking the rules the third had said, overtelling Naruto what he was, but that didn't stop the man from using the kunai with even more force, eventually even drawing a tiny bit of blood as a tear escaped the young boy's eyes. But suddenly his eyes turned a blood red with a turmoil in each eyes, and the man shrieked back, You! No, 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 that's impossible. You monster, get away! He threw the kunai, but Naruto dodged it easily and threw it back, straight into the man's shoulder, then walked back to the library, with everyone staring at him. What the hell? No, that's just impossible. How could he have done that? The word spread through the village at an insane pace. The fox boy had awakened the Sharingan. No one had a clue as to how. The boy wasn't an Uchiha for all they knew. He had no Uchiha relatives that can account for the boy's heritage, and in general, they had never seen anyone like him. Not even his actual father looked too much like him, as Naruto had a normal skin tone and horns, but just confused the villagers even more. He just stole the eyes, or something? Is what the villagers thought at least. Deep in Naruto's mind, it was like some non-existent lock finally cracked the lock, which was keeping Naruto from all his powers, and suddenly the ground cracked as that block cracked a little more, leaking some chakra, and Naruto suddenly felt a hell of a lot more powerful, as some of the chain strength his father had left him had mixed with his own chakra instantly, making him a way stronger fighter. But this power he had locked away wasn't even close to the power he would amass in his later years. But for now, that was of no concern, as we skip 8 years ahead to Naruto's genin examinations. The boy was sitting there, not at all like the Naruto we knew, except for in personality, as his power was astronomical, and he was pretty much unrivaled in most things except for chakra control and ninjutsu usage. His taijutsu could also definitely use some work, as not only did he have the problem of the Nine Tails disturbing his chakra flow, and him not knowing which chakra was his, a third chakra was also added into this equation, which makes it even harder to use his chakra. But that was of no concern, as suddenly Naruto's dream of being the Hokage was interrupted by his name being shouted. Naruto Uzumaki, please enter the room immediately. He stood up and walked to the room, shaking like crazy. And as he entered the room, he almost instantly formed the hand signs and concentrated with everything he had. Crack! The seal blocking his hidden power had another crack, etched deeply into its non-existent metal, as the ground beneath him cracked all over, and the chakra he was using to try and perform the clone jutsu spiked. Next up him appeared one. No two, no three. What the? 10 clones stood around Naruto, as he had finally managed to perform the clone jutsu. I I did it! Naruto shouted in surprise and happiness as he jumped up in delight, and Iruka gave him a kind of weird smile. Congratulations, Naruto. Iruka was absolutely astounded. What the hell? He had never seen anything like this. But he still handed him his ninja headband, which the boy quickly put on before jumping out into the streets. The villagers were highly disgusted after realizing this boy was going to become one of their ninja, but they couldn't really do anything. So they just scoffed and walked away from the boy, like they always did. As Naruto walked through the streets, he felt many papers colliding with his head from strangers. One even threw his chopstick at him, but they didn't hurt him too much, so he just ignored it, until suddenly, as Naruto was a sensory ninja, which was boosted massively by his genetics, of course, he felt a massive ill intent back at the academy, so he hurried back, only to find Mizuki with a random student who had failed the entrance exam, and he overheard what Mizuki told him. How could he betray the village like that? Naruto thought to himself as he stared daggers at Mizuki, who was telling the young boy all about the scroll of sealing, which was absolutely banned. How could he? But then he thought, the scroll of sealing, huh? That scroll that contains so many cool jutsu could be mine! He smirked to himself. Perhaps some treason against the village wasn't too bad. He wasn't going to use it against the village, was he? It'll be fine, and that he thought, as he waited until night to steal the scroll with the other academy student. The other academy student wasn't too happy to see Naruto there, but quickly realized he could be a great help, so they kind of befriended each other as they stole the scroll of sealing, then started learning from it in a bee part of the forest. The first Genin learned the basic of the Shadow Clone Jutsu from the scroll, but Naruto learned some different things. Naruto learned not only the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu, but also the 8 trigram sealing Jutsu, and they gave each other a high five. Let's go, we did it! Until suddenly a massive shuriken was flung at them from a tree, and Mizuki laughed maniacally. The bread and the monster working together? That'll make my job not at all harder. Master Orochimaru will be so glad when I bring him the body of the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki. Naruto blocked the gigantic shuriken, then looked around at the academy student, who stared back at him, both with a confused look. And suddenly Iruka jumped out as well. Mizuki, how dare you tell him that? That's treason against the village. You aren't allowed to tell Naruto that. But then Iruka noticed Naruto was there, with now a terrified expression. He was the Nine-Tailed Jinchuriki? No, that can't be possible. If he was, Iruka would have told him so. They were like brothers. But that thought was driven out of his head quickly as Mizuki told Naruto how Iruka hated him so much because of the beast still inside of him, but Naruto just scoffed. As if I believe you. Iruka's like a big brother to me, and I can sense the intention of your actions. How dare you lie to me? How dare you lie to him? Ah, I I'll kill you! Naruto was engulfed in a tiny bit of orange chakra as a tear fell from Iruka's eyes, but not it couldn't even hit the ground before Naruto flew at Mizuki, completely shattering the man's ribcage in a single punch. Then the Shadow Clone Jutsu, leaving the man near death. Iruka was completely shocked at this man's power, and saw the other Genin attempt to help out Naruto as well. Hello everyone, it's Tenitzu here, and welcome to the movie of What If Naruto Was no Otsutsuki. Now, if you want me to go into a little bit more detail about the ending, the like will be 100 likes. And in general, I just hope you will enjoy this video. If you want to support me, you can subscribe, like, and become a member. But that isn't really anything important, so let's just get straight into the movie. Now, for a quick recap of episode 1, Minato was born to two unknown Otsutsuki parents who left him with the chakra fruit in their last days on Earth before they left, completely forgetting about their son, who was then crowned the fourth Hokage in his later years, and died by the knight of his hand, leaving his only son, that being, of course, Naruto, with his power and the Nine Tails. Now Naruto had successfully beaten a Chunin in a one-on-one and impressed many by learning the multi-shadow clone jutsu, but let's just get into the interesting parts now. As Naruto was treated to some ramen by Iruka, he explained to him all music he did, but as that is not important to this what if, we'll just have a time skip. Now Naruto was sitting in the academy, Sakura on his right and the famed Sasuke on his left, who he disliked greatly. Sasuke was the only one in the class who was way better than him in most things. Naruto had way more potential and power, and in general strength, but Sasuke just had the refined skill Naruto had been wanting all this time, which annoyed Naruto, of course, as he wanted to be number one. But he'd settled for number two. Not, he was furious that he wasn't number one, but as he couldn't change much about that, he just kept it to himself. Suddenly Iruka walked in and told everyone which teams they were in, but the only important part would be that Sakura was now in Team 8, and to Naruto's delight, Iruka shouted, Team 7, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto grinned, which turned to pure delight, as the next name was called. Hinata Hyuga. He spun around and grinned at Hinata, a slight blush appearing on his cheeks, but that was nothing compared to Hinata, who just fainted in her seat with a bright pink face, although there was a tiny smile there. Then the next name was called up, and Sasuke Uchiha. Naruto's face went from pure delight to stone. Why? Why must the system do this to him? But he wasn't the only disappointed one, as not only did Sasuke actually give some sort of emotional reaction, that being a little bit of disgust, but the girls all around them stared daggers at Hinata, who dared to be in the same team as Sasuke. That should be me, one girl whispered. She doesn't deserve that, another girl whispered. She's weird. No one likes her, Sakura said loudly in an angry tone, but suddenly a pencil flew right at her forehead, thrown by Naruto. Shut up, or I'll make your forehead not the only disgusting part about you, he spat at her in anger. Naruto developed a tiny crush on Hinata, and seeing Sakura disrespect her like that, after having been disrespected all his life, infuriated him. Hinata almost fainted again, as she blushed so hard you couldn't tell the difference between her and a tomato. Now team after team left with their senseis, until only Team 7 was left. Naruto had sat over to Hinata, who was now completely passed out, while Sasuke was just sitting there, attempting to be as edgy as possible, like always, until suddenly the door flung open and in stepped Kakashi, who told them, Let's not chat here. How about we meet on the roof? Then disappeared. The two kids, Naruto of course had to carry Hinata as she was still passed out, ran out and jumped up to the roof, where Hinata awakened to see herself next to Naruto and Sasuke. This time she didn't faint, but she still had a very not faint red blush, as Kakashi began to explain what they were doing. Now, at first, you'll be introducing yourselves names, likes, dislikes, and future goals. And then he introduced himself as well after the request of Naruto. Then they moved on to the first person, that being Hinata. I'm Hinata Hyuga. My likes. I like many things. My dislikes. I don't know. My future goals are to become a person my father can be proud of. She gave a weak smile as they moved on to Sasuke. My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I hate a lot of things, and I don't particularly like anything. What I have is not a dream, because I will make it a reality. I'm going to restore my clan and destroy a certain somebody. Kakashi was a bit surprised at this kid's rather interesting goals, but then moved on to Naruto, saying, Your turn. Naruto instantly started. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like instant ramen in a cup, and I really like the ramen Iruka sensei got me at Ichiraku Noodle Shop. But I hate the 3 minutes you have to wait after you pour the water in the ramen cup. My hobby is eating different kinds of ramen and comparing them. And my future dream is to be the greatest Hokage. Then the whole village will stop disrespecting me and start treating me like I'm somebody important, and to bring peace to the entire world. Kakashi gave him a smile, but realized Naruto couldn't really see it under his mask, but just continued. Alright, you're all boring. They were all a bit surprised, but then he continued. Meet me at 8 a.m. tomorrow at the training grounds. He then disappeared as he wanted to read a book of a very interesting genre which had just released the previous day. The next day, everyone showed up exactly on time, and they were stuck waiting until 12 p.m., where Kakashi showed up and explained everything about the belt test. And now, 3, 2, 1, go! Everyone disappeared, except for Naruto, who just stood there smirking. Kakashi was a bit surprised at Naruto's sheer stupidity. Kakashi was a Jonin after all, and Naruto isn't even a Genin yet, but he's still going to fight him head on like this? Stupid. Or is it? Before Kakashi even arrived, Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata made a plan in case they were about to fight Kakashi sensei, and this was just the first step of their plan. Suddenly, Naruto jumped toward Kakashi at astounding speeds and started to taijutsu battle the man. And just wow. Naruto's taijutsu was already at a level higher than that of a Chunin, if not even higher than that. His pure strength actually made Kakashi put his book away and actually start fighting him semi-seriously. And suddenly behind him, another energy source came flying at him, and it was Sasuke, who also joined in on the fight, and Kakashi almost revealed his Sharingan. But he didn't have the chance to, as in front of him, the trump card of the plan appeared, and Naruto and Sasuke gave a quick smirk, and Naruto even told her, "Good job," as Hinata started performing the 32 palm jutsu on Kakashi, who was actually hit by every single one of them, as he was currently distracted, and then fell down. Whilst it wasn't as good as the 64 palm jutsu, but it still did kind of block 32 paths of chakra and temporarily disabled movement for Kakashi, which made it possible for Naruto to withdraw the bells from the strings and threw one to each Hinata and Sasuke, giving them a thumbs up. I didn't mind going without lunch, but that was a complete lie as his stomach growled loudly. But Kakashi held up a hand as he got up smiling. "You all pass," which confused everyone, but he waved his hand, telling them, "This test wasn't about getting the belts or anything, it was to test your teamwork and friendship, as, in the ninja world, those who break the rules are scum, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum." And then he gave them another thumbs up and asked, "Now, who wants ramen?" And Naruto jumped in surprise and happiness as they all went out to get ramen and then started their lives as Konoha Genin. Now we'll just skip ahead to the third, giving them permission to go on the Land of Waves mission. As Tazuna walked in, he was a bit surprised by the team who was going to escort him and asked, "What is that girl going to do to protect me? She looks like she'd be down in one punch." He laughed a little, but suddenly Naruto sped up toward him, escaping Kakashi's grasp, who was trying to hold him back until Tazuna, "Take that back right now," and slowly withdrew a kunai, but the third stopped him, telling him, "Naruto, stop." To which Naruto nodded, put his kunai back in his pouch, and walked back lazily. Tazuna was apologizing so much you'd think he committed murder, so the next day they moved on to their mission. As they began the journey, everything was completely fine until Naruto sensed an evil presence amongst them. But the size of it was quite puzzling. As he stopped everyone, "Wait, I sense something." "This puddle?" He suddenly threw a kunai at it, and two men jumped out and attempted to kill Kakashi. But before they could even do anything, Naruto punched one of them so hard that they were thrown into a tree, completely knocking them out and destroying the tree, while Sasuke took care of the second one. Then they bound them to a large tree and walked off. As they walked, Naruto couldn't get rid of the feeling of unease. As he walked, he constantly felt a sudden burst of killing intent from somewhere, but he never knew where. But it always quickly disappeared for no reason, until suddenly Kakashi tackled them all to the ground, and as a massive blade came flying through the sky, and the legendary Zabuza appeared in the blade. "Kakashi of the Sharingan." Sasuke looked around in confusion, but Zabuza continued, "Let me get that man, and I'll leave you and your little children alone," he said, pointing at the bridge builder, but Kakashi stood in front of them and nodded over to a place signaling where they should start the fight. There the fight began. And everything went exactly with the same as Kakashi often got the best of Zabuza, but after a single trip he was trapped. Zabuza didn't seem like he was going to take his hand away from the water prison, but suddenly, after some planning, Sasuke threw a gigantic shuriken, then another one. The first shuriken, something very thin glinted in the sunlight, which seemed to be connected from Sasuke's hand to the shuriken, but no one saw except for them. Whilst the second just zoomed past Zabuza completely. Zabuza easily dodged both and laughed, but suddenly Sasuke smirked as the second shuriken transformed into Naruto, who performed the wind style, Gale Palm, and the first shuriken was pulled back by not only the chakra strings attached to them by Sasuke, but also with the speed of the Gale Palm. And Zabuza was hit square in the back with them, causing him to fall over, grunting in pain as he started to bleed heavily. But before Kakashi could restart the fight, a mysterious Anbu came to collect the body, thanking them for their help in killing Zabuza, then disappearing into thin air, as Kakashi was brought to Tazuna's hut to recover. And everything from that point went similarly to canon, just that Naruto had even more difficulty with mastering walking up trees, because with the rather interesting chakra dynamics in his body, but after a while he mastered it. But one day he fell asleep in a flowerbed where he met Haku, and that exchange happened as well. Now a very important day comes up. Hinata, Sasuke, and Kakashi went off to the bridge to supervise its building and make sure they're all safe, but Naruto still oversleeps, protects Tazun's grandson, then runs to the fight at max speed, where he saw Sasuke and Kakashi fighting Zabuza, while Hinata was fighting Haku, and she didn't look very good, as she had wounds all over her body and was very bloody. Suddenly the ground beneath Naruto shook, and everyone turned around suddenly a crater appeared around Naruto as orange chakra came out of his body, and a strange whitish blue chakra was enveloping him as well. How? How dare you hurt her? And he flew at Haku with such power that the bridge shook from his presence alone. I'll kill you! His eyes now bloody red with two tomoes in each eye. Into part 3. Now for the start, we'll just have a little recap of part 2. Naruto was put into a team with Hinata Hyuga and Sasuke Uchiha, and they were able to beat Kakashi, who was holding back of course, with their teamwork, then passing and living their lives. In the Hokage office, the bridge builder had requested a mission, and the team had now helped the man arrive at his hut after battling two Chunin-level fighters and even outsmarting the legendary Zabuza. Now the team was going to fight both Zabuza and his subordinate Haku. Alright, now that we have all of that done, let's just get straight into the more interesting bits. Naruto was flying at Haku at incredible speeds and hit him right in the ribcage, breaking it all over with a single punch. I'll hurt you. And Naruto jumped at him again with a kick right into the face, the mask shattering, and so did Haku's nose. Naruto stopped before attacking him again and asked, Wait, Haku? Yes, in surprise. The orange chakra slowly disappearing from his body, but the whitish blue aura still around him. But that aura seemed to calm him down. It had a fatherly nature to it, making him way calmer than before, as he suddenly heard a lightning sound and turned around only to see Haku speeding towards Zabuza, and as Kakashi flung himself at Zabuza, Haku jumped in front of him and died with a smile as he was able to protect Zabuza. Zabuza was silent as he jumped back, Kakashi following right on his tail, but he seemed to be looking for someone. There, Gato appeared on the bridge with his men and kicked Haku with his foot. He's really dead, huh? A tool to the very end. He and his men laughed, and Zabuza, unknowingly to anyone, grimaced. You bastard! What do you think you're doing? Naruto was furious about this and ran toward Gato, but Kakashi stopped him. Then Naruto shouted, You! You say something too! He shouted at Zabuza. He was your comrade, right? To which Zabuza coolly replied, Shut up, punk. Haku was already dead. But weren't you with Haku for a long time? Naruto said with anger in every word. As Gato used me, I was simply using Haku. What we shinobi are tools. What I wanted were his skills, and not Haku himself. I have no regrets. So was said, and as Naruto paused, until suddenly replying, Do you really mean that? Kakashi tried to tell Naruto to stop, and how they did not need to fight Zabuza anymore, but Naruto brushed it off. Shut up, my enemy is still this one. He pointed at Zabuza, breathing heavily, then went on. He really liked you. He liked you that much. Even so, you don't feel anything at all? You really, honestly, don't feel anything at all when a person becomes as strong as you. Does that person really behave like you? He threw his life away for you. He didn't even fulfill his dream yet. And yet, to die as a tool, that's just messed up. Zabuza passed, but teardrops were falling from his eyes. Kid, don't say anymore. Haku he wasn't just thinking of me. He was feeling pain inside for you while he battled you guys too. I know. He was too kind. I'm glad we could fight you at the end. He removed the bandages covering his mouth, then asked, Kid, throw me that kunai knife. With which Naruto complied, and Zabuza caught it with his mouth. Then, tears falling from his eyes, killed every single member Gato had with him, until taking out Gato at the end. Returning from killing Gato and his men, Zabuza lay down next to Haku in his final moments, wishing he could go to the same place as Haku. Then, Zabuza perished. Naruto, who was still crying a little, wiped away his tears and buried Zabuza and Haku next to each other on the hill, with a typical shinobi grave and a flower planted on each of their graves. The next few days went by smoothly as the bridge was completed. Kakashi agreed not to tell anyone about Tazuna lying about the mission's true rank, and the team moved out with Naruto waving goodbye to the family until he was out of sight. then continuing to walk back normally. The journey back home went smoothly as well, and they arrived back home safely. Back in the village, there, rather boring, life as ordinary again continued, until one day Kakashi told them about the Chunin exams, making Naruto very happy, so he went to the hot springs to celebrate a little, where he met a rather weird-looking man. The man had very spiky, long white hair, and strange red marks on his face, but Naruto thought little of it until he saw what the man was doing. Apparently, he had made a small hole to the woman's side, where he was now looking through. Of course, Naruto, being the very formal and rule-abiding man that he was, instantly rushed toward Jiraiya and started peeking with him as well, and talking about which girls they found most attractive, until the lady who owned these hot springs came in and threw both of them out, after hitting them on the head with a broom, of course. As they were thrown out, Naruto and Jiraiya began to laugh loudly, and then started talking with each other. And Jiraiya noticed it instantly. He felt something familiar about the boy. Not only was he similar in general, but his chakra signature almost felt the same, but also not. It was quite intriguing, but there was no doubt about this in any way. This boy was the son of the fourth, so he asked him, "Hey boy, how about you train with me? You told me about those tuning exams, and I think you'd do way better if you had someone as strong, as intelligent, as cool as me to teach you." Naruto nodded in excitement as Jiraiya had told him a bit about who he was and everything. So they shook hands, agreeing that they would come back here another time to see if the hole was still there. Now we'll skip ahead to the first stage of the Trinity exams, that of course being the written test. Now as Naruto is a lot smarter in this, he was actually able to fill out the questions with ease. In fact, and to his surprise, was actually the fastest ever fully correct completion in the history of this test, making him incredibly proud of himself. But in reality, he had only just read these books the day before because Jiraiya was thinking out loud about what the topics for the answers could be. But that was of no concern, as he still got the fastest time either way, so they got a week off before the next test. Of course, Sasuke was slightly mad that Naruto outclassed him, and with such ease, so he started reading more as well. And when Naruto saw this, he started reading more as well, actually training his Sharingan in the process, as he was using it to read the books faster and intake a lot more information than he could regularly, which made him even more interested as he actually found these books to be quite entertaining. He was actually just reading them this entire week. Though sometimes in the afternoons he did train heavily with Jiraiya, then went straight back to reading. Eat ramen, read, fall asleep, and repeat. But for now, let's just get into the second stage of the exam. Now, the first part of it goes exactly as canon, with everyone showing up to the forest entrance and Anko explaining the test, then giving everyone their scrolls, and then they were off. Now everything seemed to be going quite well, as Naruto's team was not at all ambushed, but suddenly, as Naruto went out to take a pee, there was an attempted ambush on him by a gigantic snake, and he was almost eaten, but he jumped back, quickly putting his pants back on, then getting serious. Suddenly, that calming whitish blue chakra enveloped the boy again, and his gaze turned from surprise and anger to one of calm and collectedness, as suddenly he flew at the snake and punched it so hard that it actually flew back a little, and, after Naruto just kept on pummeling it, it fainted, and Naruto could go back to help his team. And what he discovered there shocked him a little, as he saw Sasuke fighting a man, also standing on a snake, whilst Hinata stood there paralyzed in fear. And out of nowhere, one of the snakes headed straight for Hinata, who closed her eyes, seemingly accepting death. But suddenly she saw a light source moving at incredible speeds, from far away to right in front of her. And as she opened her eyes, there stood Naruto, a look of calm still on his face, as he pummeled the snake until it fainted as well. Orochimaru was awestruck by this kid's power, and quickly changed focus from Sasuke to this kid. With this kid's body, he could become so strong. But he still had a backup plan if that failed, so he stretched his neck. And while sustaining a stab wound to the neck from Sasuke, was still able to bite Sasuke on the neck, leaving a mark, and Sasuke fainting. Hinata, who felt a sudden burst of energy to prove herself after seeing what Naruto had just done, ran to where Sasuke was falling, as Naruto flew at Orochimaru and the battle began. Not only was Naruto now boosted by that fire-like chakra, but an orange chakra seemed to be swelling up as well, as the calm nature of the whitish chakra seemed to clash with the angry nature of the orange one, until finally harmonizing, creating a light orange aura on Naruto, and as he punched the man on top of the snake, and withdrew something right from as well, the man was flung into a tree, completely destroying it in the process. But as Orochimaru was a member of the Sannin, he wasn't going to die by the hands of a mere genin, so he made him leave, sadly having to leave Naruto behind, but at least he had gotten a curse mark on Sasuke. Suddenly, Naruto jumped towards Sasuke and picked him up, then pulled out a white scroll and smirked at Hinata. I got this from that dude after punching him. Hinata smiled as well, as Naruto picked her up as well, making her faint, of course, and then sped toward the tower. Part 4. Now, like always, we'll start this part off with a little recap of the previous part, in which Naruto had almost killed Haku but stopped himself before, because of the calming nature of the whitish blue chakra, and then Haku sacrificed himself protecting Zabuza. And Naruto used Talk no Jutsu for the first time. After this, Naruto met one of the legendary Sannin, that being Jiraiya, of course, and began training with the legendary Toad Sage. Now Naruto just defeated one of the legendary Sannin, although Orochimaru was not giving it his all, and was now rushing toward the tower to complete the mission. The story now begins as Naruto finally arrives at the tower and lays his two passed out teammates next to him as he finally opens the scroll, and out comes Iruka sensei? Iruka was about to congratulate the team on passing, but then he saw Sasuke with a mark on his neck and picked him up, not knowing he had to rush him to Kakashi to get him checked out. As in this would have Sasuke had no chance to wake up and clobber the Sun Ninja, so for now he was still passed out. Iruka was about to take Hinata as well, but Naruto told him, "She's fine." Then Iruka nodded and explained, "Alright then, I'll take him to the hospital now. You have a 1 week break before the next stage, so be sure to train hard. And just where they are meeting up, etc." And then he smiled at Naruto, pat him on the shoulder, and told him, "Good job." Then left to bring Sasuke to the hospital as quickly as possible and inform Kakashi about this. For now, Naruto just left Hinata a note informing her about the 1 week break and where the next stage of the exam would be taking place, with the date and his signature on it. When Hinata woke up, she read the message and would place the note in her pocket, knowing she'll cherish this note for a very long time. Back at Naruto's point of view, he had ran toward where he sensed Jiraiya's energy, and was not at the hot springs, which was actually very uncommon, but he was actually in the plains, him meditating. Naruto sensed some weird energy around him, and suddenly Jiraiya got some very faint red markings until it all disappeared, and Jiraiya swore loudly. Naruto was interested in this. He felt such a strong chakra source around Jiraiya. He always felt the chakra, but it was quite strange. He had never felt it this concentrated. But that was of no matter, as Naruto had more important things to say, and walked up to Jiraiya and told him, "Hey, previous age, we've got a week off again, I want to train again." Jiraiya nodded, stood up, then smiled. "How about we train more with that jutsu?" Naruto nodded in excitement as they began their training. We now skip ahead a week, and we see everyone in the third stage of the Chunin exams. Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata all arrived at around the same time, as Sasuke was notified of the time and place beforehand, was able to train a lot more than in the original, having already started his training with Kakashi, and having his curse mark sealed away. Now, a few join insert to explain the third stage, but as we all know what this third stage will be, we'll just skip that, as we'll just get into the first fight, which was announced almost instantly after everyone, except for the two fighters, took their seats. First fight, Naruto Uzumaki, Kiba Inuzuka. The voice shouted through the stadium as Naruto and Kiba walked into the fight, and Naruto stretched out his hand to show respect, but Kiba just scoffed and shook it with as much force as he could. It was clear Kiba had way too much confidence for his own good, and so the countdown began. 3, 2, 1. Go! And Naruto flew at Kiba so fast that Kiba couldn't even comprehend him, and punched him once, instantly knocking him out. Wait, what? Naruto looked at the passed out Kiba and looked around a little sheepishly. Naruto apparently wasn't the only stunned one, as the entire crowd was silent, until a few people started cheering, making him smile, and they went on to the next fight, then the next, and so on. Sasuke's fight was still similar to the original, so we'll just skip that too, but now we'll be getting into some interesting part. That being Hinata versus Neji. Now, Hinata got a severe jump in motivation after seeing how strong Naruto was, and began training 10 times harder than before. She was actually becoming a lot stronger, and that showed after the countdown as she performed her first ever self-created jutsu. Gentle Step, Lion Fist, which was weaker version of the Twin Lion Fists, which she had not been able to develop yet. But the jutsu still gave an alright increase to attack potency, and so the next fight truly began as they started exchanging hands, and Hinata did a lot better than Neji expected, but he just scoffed and began getting more serious, actually hurting Hinata a lot in the process, even causing her to bleed. Naruto began to grip on the iron bars, that kept him from the arena so hard that they started to get crushed under his hand. Another jab from Neji right into Hinata's stomach, then another one, and another one, and another one, and another one, and Hinata just kept on being beaten up by the ruthless Neji, until suddenly his hand was stopped, as Hinata's bleeding became worse. And who stopped it? Naruto did. And the arena suddenly began to shake, as his eyes turned from their usual blue into slitted blood red, and he began to crush Neji's finger with his grasp. And it actually hurt Neji a ton, but Naruto released him and told him, I'll make you pay for that. Neji began his speech about how Naruto was a failure, but Naruto just flicked his forehead, leaving a pretty big mark there, which hurt a ton, and walked off scowling. He didn't even notice the entire arena shaking like crazy just because of his anger as he stepped out. His rage was immense, and he was going to make sure Neji paid for that one severely. For every unneeded hit Neji placed on Hinata, he would give two back. No three, no four, no five, and he will not stop. But as that isn't happening for another month, we'll just skip ahead another month to the finale of the Chunin exams, that being the third stage, and now with everyone who had won the first time was held, and the first fight would be first fight Naruto Uzumaki, Neji Hyuga. Naruto smirked as he walked out, and so did Neji, as the two faced each other and both shook hands. But the arena was already settled in anticipation, and the so much anticipated countdown began. 3, 2, 1, go! And Naruto activated his Byakugan, which confused Neji. This man was no Hyuga, but his eyes did always look like one of theirs. He had probably stolen them. How dare he! Neji grimaced as he activated his own Byakugan and began teasing Naruto. Look at you, the failure against the prodigy. How interesting. He smirked as he flew at Naruto, attempting to use the 64 palm technique to shut him down instantly, but Naruto easily caught every single one of his jabs and threw them back as he punched Neji once, throwing him into the wall, then began performing his own style of the Hyugas. Naruto style, 100 palms, he said as he began jabbing at every chakra point he saw with his Byakugan, completely shutting Neji down and winning the fight, then telling him, look at what this so-called failure did. How could you think doing that to Hinata was proving anything? And Neji just grimaced further, but Naruto continued, be a man, Neji. Accept your errors. Accept your defeat. Then Naruto walked off, leaving Neji behind, who had a single tear in his eye, as Neji finally accepted that he was truly in the wrong. After this, he had also learned why his father had died, making him fully realize he had messed up. Now, the next important fight to us will be Sasuke against Gara, which was almost skipped because Sasuke was not showing up, but as they were about to announce that it was skipped, Sasuke showed up in the middle of the arena, with Kakashi behind him with a new look, and looking a lot more confident now, and so the fight with Gara finally began. The start of the fight was pretty one-sided, as Gara used his sand to block any taijutsu attack coming from Sasuke, but it was very difficult to do, as Sasuke was seemingly the exact copy of Rock Lee without his weights, even matching his speed, making Guy Sensei rather upset, as Lee had worked so hard on this, but that was of no matter. Perhaps Sasuke just had more power of youth, as suddenly a blue light filled the arena, as Sasuke flew at Gara with his newly acquired Chidori, and was actually able to pierce Gara's sand armor, making Gara bleed a little, and suddenly he began to freak out, going into a partial transformation with half of his body slowly becoming covered in sand. Some of the entire stands were cast under Genjutsu, with just the Jonin, a few Chunin, and certain Genin not being caught in the Genjutsu. The people who weren't caught under this Genjutsu, who were Genin, were Sakura Haruno, Neji and Hinata Hyuga, Sasuke Uchiha, Naruto Uzumaki, and a few absolutely not important people. Out of nowhere, Gara started to sprint away, and because the third Hokage seemed to have gone somewhere, Naruto and Sasuke decided they'll go after Gara together, and so they ran after him at full speed, although Naruto was holding back so he could be at the same speed that Sasuke was, and suddenly they ran right into him, in the forest where the fight began. Sasuke was overconfident at first, and told Naruto to stay back, as he'd fight Gara himself, with his Chidori, so Sasuke flew at Gara and began to taijutsu battle him. But every time he tried, Gara just punched him away, and even when he attempted to use his new legendary Chidori, Gara was still able to fling him away. Every time Naruto tried to step in, Sasuke shuddered him to stay back, as this was his fight. But after a while, Sasuke was flung into a tree so hard that he began to pass out, and Naruto started to feel a little furious. But at least the fight was over now, so he could finally step in. Gara would leave Sasuke alone. I mean, he wouldn't want to kill him, right? Wrong. Gara jumped towards Sasuke and attempted to murder him right on the spot, but Naruto jumped in front of Gara and punched him so hard that the sand on his body broke apart, and he was flung into a tree, completely breaking it. And then he was flung into the next, and the next, and broke through 10 trees at once. Looking at Naruto, his eyes were slitted and blood red, and he was covered in orange chakra. How dare you try to kill Sasuke? And before Gara knew it, Naruto was right in front of him again, and made 5 shadow clones, which all began to beat up Gara. But suddenly Gara finally snapped and transformed into the full One-Tailed. However, Naruto wasn't phased, as he just performed a few hand signs, bit his finger, then used a summoning jutsu, and out of nowhere, the gigantic Gamabunta appeared, who, with the help of Naruto, transformed into the Nine-Tails, looking exactly like it, but without its power, then ran towards the One-Tail, stopping it from moving as Naruto flew at Gara and punched him right in the forehead. Then both of them crashed to the ground as the One-Tails disappeared. And as Gara lay there, starting to bleed from his head, Naruto walked over and told him, "It's almost unbearable, isn't it? That pain of being all alone. I know that feeling, I've been there. And that dark and lonely place. But now there are others. Other people who mean a lot to me. I care more about them than I do myself. And I won't let anyone hurt them. That's why I'll never give up. I will stop you, even if I have to kill you. But why? Why would you do this for someone else? They saved they saved me from myself. They rescued me from loneliness. They were the first to accept me as who I am. They're my friends." And so Gara was finally cured of his intense heartbreak and hatred, and was finally able to accept his past, then being taken back to the sand by Tamari and Kankuro, who he thanked. In another part of the village, the third Hokage was killed. Naruto had made it to the tower and talked to Iruka, who quickly got Sasuke to the hospital, after which the last stage of the Chunin exams began, in which Naruto destroyed Kiba, then Hinata displayed her new jutsu, but was quickly pummeled by Neji, to the point of bleeding, which pissed off Naruto, so, after a month, time skip, Naruto beat the shit out of Neji and made him see the errors in his ways. After that, Sasuke fought Gara, which turned into him getting knocked out in the woods, and Naruto beating Gara and using Takano Jutsu. But with all that out of the way, let's just get straight into the interesting bits. Naruto, after the Chunin exams, was actually promoted to the rank of Chunin because of his exemplary display of power, being able to resist the Sans Genjutsu, for example, helping Gara and Neji finally accept themselves and his power, making Naruto extremely happy. But someone definitely wasn't: Sasuke. Sasuke was furious at how much Naruto was improving, whilst he seemed to be getting stagnated. But he had no time to dwell on this, as something very important was about to happen, that being the third's funeral. Naruto and Hinata both arrived at the place where they had agreed to meet up, and there Sasuke already was, completely dressed in black like everyone else, and they walked to the funeral together in silence. Getting to the funeral, it was a depressing sight as the entire village stood before the photo of the third Hokage in his casket. And as Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata walked to their place, Naruto saw a small kid crying. The kid had brown hair and was wearing the typical blue ninja headband. Naruto just patted him on the shoulder and told him, "I know what it feels like to lose someone. Just do your best for that person. Make them think their death wasn't in vain." He smiled at the kid, who smiled back weakly and nodded, then turned back around to the casket and photo. Once the funeral concluded, every villager, ninja, and more walked to the casket and gave a single flower, leaving a giant mountain. As they all walked back, the brown-haired child, now walking next to Naruto, and asking him, "Could you be my sensei?" Naruto, who knew this child had just gone through his fear loss, gave a smile and nodded. "Sure. Meet me here tomorrow, and we'll begin your training." The kid nodded, and as he walked back away, he told him, "I'm Konohamaru. Nice to meet you." Naruto shouted back, "I'm Naruto. Pleased to meet you too." And so they began their training. Naruto was actually able to teach Konohamaru at least the basic Shadow Clone Jutsu. Konohamaru currently didn't have enough chakra for the multi-Shadow Clone Jutsu. Before Naruto was pulled aside by Jiraiya, who told him that they'll be going on an adventure to find the legendary healer, Tsunade, who hadn't been seen in the leaf for a very long time, which made Naruto very excited. Not only could he meet another one of the legendary Sannin, but she was a healer. He had wanted to learn some things about healing jutsu for a while now, but he pushed it aside, as he was just happy to go on a mission with Jiraiya, who also told him that he had a surprise for him on the journey. So, the next day, they started their journey to find Tsunade. On the Jiraiya told Naruto what the surprise would be. On this journey, I'll be teaching him very powerful jutsu. So powerful, it was created by the fourth Hokage himself. Naruto's eyes widened in excitement as Jiraiya went on explaining how the Rasengan works and handed Naruto the first stage of learning the Rasengan. That being the stage where you need to learn how to spin your chakra in the balloon, and after only 15 minutes, Naruto walked back to Jiraiya with an absolutely destroyed balloon in his hands. I think I did it? Jiraiya was surprised and laughed at the sheer power of this boy, but just went on. Alright then, we'll move on to the next stage then. And Jiraiya handed him a rubber ball, which he had to pop, but this time, there was no water to help this, so he had a lot more difficulty with this, and was actually only able to complete the stage after arriving at the first hotel. But Jiraiya was awestruck. He had taken way longer than this to learn the Rasengan, and Naruto was doing it like it was child's play. But he laughed it off, and handed Naruto to the last stage, the most difficult for Naruto. He had to contain a Rasengan in the balloon without popping it, but every time he tried, it almost instantly exploded. It seemed Naruto had an issue with pouring too much power into his attacks, so he needed to learn how to contain that a little more. But before he could master that, the Rasengan, they made a stop in a hotel, where Jiraiya went out and borrowed some of Naruto's money, and was now with some girls, as Naruto heard a knock at the door, and thinking it was Jiraiya, he ran to the door and opened it, just to be met by Itachi and Kisame. Naruto was shocked by this, and quickly closed the door as he made 50 shadow clones. So when they busted the door open, the vision was clouded by smoke, then 50 Narutos flew at them, with its original state back, as he sensed a familiar energy running toward the hotel, then entering it. Was this Sasuke? Yes, this was indeed Sasuke, who suddenly ran into the hallway, with his Chidori, but Naruto stopped him. Wait, Sasuke, we'll beat them together! But not before he could finish his sentence. Sasuke flew at Itachi, and his wrist was almost broken by Itachi, who just falling away. But Naruto stepped in, and the entire hotel began to shake. Don't you dare hurt him any further. You. And he flew at Itachi, punching him right in the face. And Naruto was strong, but he wasn't as strong as Itachi, and so Itachi was easily able to withstand the hit, but was astounded by this kid's power. So when Jiraiya came, they quickly fled, and Jiraiya had a few people from the Leaf make sure that Sasuke got back home safely, and treated his wound. Now, the next day, they actually did bump into Tsunade in a pub where, after some conversation, Jiraiya finally got to the point. Tsunade, the Leaf Village wants you to be the next Hokage. But Tsunade just scoffed and responded, No, I'm not stupid enough to become a Hokage. Anyone who wants the job can have it. It's a stupid dream to have. Becoming Hokage. She almost laughed, but suddenly Naruto whispered, Shut up. Tsunade's eyes widened as she went, Come again? Shut up! Naruto shouted, his eyes turning blood red with two tomo in each eye. It seemed Naruto had progressed the Sharingan well, and his face was contorted in rage. How dare you! How dare you insult the Hokage! And an orange chakra slowly started to appear around him, but Jiraiya stopped him, the orange chakra going away. Calm down, Naruto. But before he could continue, Tsunade interrupted. Nah, let him at me. Come on, kid, let's take this outside. She said, smirking confidently as she walked out, and Naruto followed. But Tsunade, in her drunk state, couldn't quite comprehend how the air around Naruto was now literally shaking because he was so mad at what Tsunade did. When they arrived outside, Tsunade made a deal. Kid, if you win this match, I'll give you this. She pointed at the necklace and continued, and I'll come back to the Leaf Village quietly. But if you lose, I get all the money in your wallet. Naruto clenched his fists, knowing that he had almost no money in that left because Jiraiya had taken it, and nodded at Tsunade. Alright, little kid, I'll hold back for your safety, Tsunade told him, smirking cockily. Big mistake. As the fight began, Naruto's anger skyrocketed, and he was clad in an orange aura, and flew at Tsunade and punched her right in the face, causing severe pain, but not knocking her out, as Naruto wasn't strong enough to knock out Asani in one punch. But then Naruto came from above with an incomplete Rasengan, and as he attempted to use it on her, it suddenly exploded from a massive chakra flowing into it. Naruto had way too much chakra for his own good, but it injured both Naruto and Tsunade, in the process knocking them both out. But Naruto stayed awake a little longer, winning the fight in the process. Tsunade was astounded at this kid's power and clapped him on the back, but she had a secret that she didn't want to tell anyone about. One day, when they were about to go back to the Leaf Village, Tsunade was nowhere to be found, but Naruto sensed her energy with Orochimaru's an unknown one. No. She wouldn't help them, right? She must be fighting him. Now, like in the original, at first Tsunade attempted to curse Orochimaru, but Kabuto was able to see through the trap and protect his master, and so the fight between them began as normal, until Naruto showed up and tanked the hit for Tsunade. What the hell do you think you're doing? Naruto suddenly grabbed hold of Kabuto's arm and broke it with ease as he punched him right in the face, breaking his nose as well. Don't worry, Tsunade, Naruto's here to help. And he smiled at her, but Kabuto was able to heal himself and rushed at Naruto with a kunai. And Naruto just grabbed the kunai, but in the process it stabbed it right through his hand, horrifying Tsunade, who had always been terrified of blood. But Naruto gave her a thumbs up as he formed a Rasengan and hit Kabuto right in the stomach, completely knocking him out and curing Tsunade from her fear of blood for good now, as she had seen how confident and good Naruto was. The rest of the fight continued like normal, and so they returned back to the leaf with Tsunade, who also congratulated Naruto for winning their duel by giving him her necklace, then congratulating him on becoming a Chunin as well. The necklace actually belonged to the first Hokage, which made it absolutely priceless to Naruto as they began training, but before he could get very far, he was interrupted by Sasuke, who was getting jealous at the levels of strength Naruto was reaching. Sasuke used to be so much better than him, but now Naruto dared to get stronger than him. How dare he? So he challenged Naruto. Naruto, right now, on the roof. Naruto complied, giving him a smile, as he thought this would just be a friendly spar, but that intention was quickly revealed to be wrong, as Sasuke instantly attacked Naruto with all he had, but Naruto dodged it and punched him, holding his strength back a lot, so it would only be hurting Sasuke, but not enough to actually injure him, and so the fight went on until the clash with the Rasengan Chidori happened. Kakashi, of course, stepped in as he saw their spar and knew that Naruto would most likely destroy Sasuke with this, but Sasuke had a very smug look on his face when he saw the impact of his Chidori versus Naruto's Sengun, but when he looked back from the back, he saw that not only was that only the front part was still there, as the rest had been blown to pieces completely by Naruto's Rasengan, and the water tank had almost been completely destroyed, making him furious. Naruto hadn't dared to surpass him, had he? He would not allow that, so when the Sound Force showed up, he went with them completely willingly and swallowed the pill where they sealed him away in the chamber, and everything went the exact same until the fight with Sasuke began. Sasuke, don't you feel anything for the village at all? Don't you feel anything for your friends? They risked their lives for you, Sasuke. But Sasuke just shrugged it off, and Naruto continued. They almost died for you, and you still think just because of some power. Orochimaru almost killed you. He almost killed me. But Sasuke shrugged it off again. He didn't seem to care. And so the fight began. Each punch Naruto landed did a good amount of damage, but Naruto couldn't bring himself to go all out, or even half his power, and so in the final clash with Sasuke, he just couldn't bring himself to give it his all, concluding in an explosion where Sasuke was seemingly knocked out. But as Naruto began to pick him up, Sasuke's curse mark awakened him, and he pierces Naruto with a Chidori out of nowhere, right through his left lung. But Naruto kicks him away at full power, now cracking Sasuke's ribcage all over and breaking his arm. But Naruto was still severely injured and passed out from all the stress and this wound now. Kabuto proceeded to take Sasuke with him to Orochimaru. The next thing Naruto saw was him being in a hospital, even though he felt completely fine as his healing factor was absolutely monstrous, with Jiraiya telling him to give up on Sasuke, as he had given up on Orochimaru too, but Naruto refused. Jiraiya gave him a big smile as he told him, I'm proud of you, Naruto, and then where to meet the next day, and that they were going on a big adventure, and so the next day, their 3 year adventure
Part
started.
6.
Now, for a quick recap of Part 5, Naruto, Hinata, and Sasuke had gone to the third Okane's funeral, where Naruto met Konohamaru, the grandson of the third, and taught him the Shadow Clone Jutsu before moving out on the Tsunade retrieval arc. There, Naruto proved himself to Tsunade and defeated Kabuto. Afterwards, Sasuke was shocked by Naruto's new power and challenged him to a fight, which Sasuke basically lost, making him hungry for more power, as he wanted to defeat his brother sometime. So he joined the Sound Four. After a battle in the Valley of the End, Sasuke was left victorious because of a dirty trick in Kabuto, and so Naruto moved on to the 3 year long journey with Jiraiya. Now 3 years had passed, and Naruto had grown a lot. His Otsutsuki genes had added some extra height, as well as he stood now at 5'6", which was around 2 inches taller than in the original, making him one of the tallest, if not the tallest now. And suddenly he jumped on a very high pole in a single jump and shouted, "I'm finally back!" smiling. Some people looked around. Some looked a little disgusted that he returned. Some waved, and others gave him a thumbs up and smile. although the majority fit in the first category. Now Naruto jumped down and began to walk around, meeting everyone again. The first person he met was Kiba, who smiled at him and gave him a quick hug. After that he met Shino, who he didn't recognize, hurting his feelings greatly, and after that he met Hinata again. Hinata, unlike the original, did not faint instantly after seeing him. Next she gave him a quick handshake. Welcome back. We need to go to the fifth Hokage. Yeah, alright, Naruto told her, as they began to run toward the Hokage mansion. Shortly after, Naruto and Hinata burst through the door. Naruto gave Tsunade a big smile, which she reciprocated. Welcome back! And she began to explain some things that aren't as important to the story, but then told them that she had a surprise for both of them. Naruto looked around at Hinata with a confused but excited look on his face, but she looked none the wiser, and Naruto asked, What is it? And she smiled and pointed at the window. Naruto looked out of the window and saw Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said, smiling widely as he jumped out onto the roof, but Kakashi was reading a novel. It was the second time rereading this, as the next volume hadn't been released yet. As Naruto walked out to the roof, Kakashi gave him a quick wave, and Naruto began to pull out something out of his pocket. I've got something for you, he said, finally pulling out that highly desired next novel, as it was a pre-release from Jiraiya personally. The village seemed to almost shake with the pure happiness and desire Kakashi had to read that book, so he quickly told both him and Hinata what they'll do tomorrow and where to meet, then instantly disappeared. It seemed he was really looking forward to reading this. The next day, Hinata, Naruto, and Kakashi, the last one, was very surprisingly uh, not late, as Kakashi had a very big reputation for being late, and Kakashi proceeded to explain more about the work, what they were going to do today. Now, you've of course already done this test, but today I'll be testing your powers more in the second round of the belt tests. Rules are still as normal. Kakashi gave them a big smile, which both of them returned, and so the fight began. After Kakashi gave them a countdown, as the countdown ended, Naruto jumped at Kakashi after giving Hinata a thumbs up and telling him, "We'll defeat him together." And Hinata gave a thumbs up as well, as the fight truly began. As Naruto began to taijutsu battle Kakashi, the latter was absolutely stunned, as Naruto was actually better and stronger than him in taijutsu. Naruto was actually winning against Kakashi, and this was not known to Kakashi, of course. Naruto wasn't even using his full power. He was using half at most, as he had not been using his full power for the last 3 years to improve his chakra control and so he wouldn't kill everyone by accident. As Kakashi was being beaten, he quickly pulled out his headband, showing off his Sharingan, but Naruto responded by using his own Sharingan, now making him better than even Kakashi with the Sharingan. But floored Kakashi, but this small mistake, letting his guard down for a second at best, cost him the fight, as Hinata flew at Kakashi, performing the 64 palms so fast, Kakashi was absolutely stunned at her power as well, and her strength. Jesus Christ. Hinata was the student of Tsunade, replacing Sakura, so she was basically a stronger, better personality, better in general, everything better, Sakura. Kakashi was flung back as he was completely unable to get up, and Naruto and Hinata kept the belt, with Naruto giving Hinata a pat on the back, making her blush a little, but not anything more. Now the rest all went similar to Kaden, as one day they learned of Gara's disappearance and head off to the Sand Village, with everything going the same. Naruto was still caught in Itachi's Genjutsu, etc. But now let's skip ahead to when they finally arrive. Hinata is able to make a cure for Sasuke's poison much faster than Sakura ever could, and she heals Kankuro, grabbing an extra flask for her and her other team members. In Tsunagakure, Naruto and the rest of Team 7 also meet Lady Chio, who seemed like an unbearable old hag, as she thought of the young generation as weak and didn't ever support them, but still put all the problems from her generation on their backs, without a second thought. Now, as that is not really important to the story, we'll be skipping ahead to the fights, that being Hinata and Lady Chio against Sasori, and Naruto and Kakashi against Deidara. As Naruto, being the main character of this What If and the series in general, was fighting Deidara, we'll just do that first. As Naruto saw Deidara, his blood began to boil. This man. This was the man responsible for Gar's disappearance. The boy he was so proud for becoming the Kazekage so early. The boy who would overcome his hatred, being killed just for their plans. This this wasn't how things were supposed to go. Gar and him should have become close friends and both be the Kage of their respective villages. But these men just took Gar away from him like that? No. He wouldn't allow it then. A bit of orange chakra swelled up within him, but the whitish blue chakra quickly calmed him down. Naruto's fury wasn't enough for the fatherly nature to fail, so it worked as always. And with the extra power boost of this aura, Naruto began to fight against Deidara. Naruto was doing incredibly well against him, as Naruto wasn't used to this. And so, after some fighting, which consisted of Deidara sending high amounts of explosives at Naruto, which he either dodged or completely destroyed, Naruto was finally able to defeat him, with the father chakra often coming in very useful, especially when he used a Rasengan to completely blow apart the bird, which was carrying Gara in its mouth. So Daedra, shocked by this kid's power, quickly fled with another gigantic explosive clay bird, being very disgruntled. Was he, the great, incredibly talented and artistic Daedra, just beaten by something like that? No. No, he couldn't have. Yes, it must have been him holding back because the blue white chakra was so beautiful. Yes, that must be it. Naruto began walking back, carrying Gar's body, in complete shock, as back to the sand village, where the fight with Sasori also began. Now Hinata, being much more capable than Sakura could have ever dreamed of, was able to hold Sasuke at bay quite well, as alongside Lady Chiyo's help. In some cases, like using her puppet jutsu, so Hinata was barely able to avoid an attack from Sasori. But in the end, like in the original, he let himself be killed by his mother and father puppets, just wanting to feel their last embrace before succumbing to his wounds, giving a slight smile at Hinata, showing her that, whilst his body may be a puppet, his heart was not. As Naruto arrived back, his face looked pale as he tested if Gara still had a pulse, only to find he had truly died. He'd never forgive him that. Never. But it seemed this loss was counterable, as Lady Chiyo stepped up and told everyone, "This generation doesn't need me anymore. It needs a leader, a figure of peace." She finally smiled at them all and thanked them. "Thank you for letting me finally see the truth of my actions. I... I'll be giving my life for now. I trust in all of you to make this world a better place." And so she performed the jutsu, giving her own life to revive Gara. As Gara's eyes opened slowly, Naruto flung around his arms and hugged him, as he then helped him up with a single tear escaping Gara's eyes, as Naruto clapped him on the back. "You had me worried there. I thought you died." And he hugged Gara once more before taking his leave with Kakashi and Hinata. Kakashi wasn't forced to use the Kamui this time, so he was still in very good shape, and so all was well. But the next day something rather interesting happened. A strange man suddenly attacked Naruto, but Naruto was able to easily deflect his attack. That man proved to be Sai. That new man was Sai, and he was added to their team as a replacement for Sasuke, as they couldn't go around in a team of 3 in total. So Sai was added, and he immediately left a bad impression by, first of all, attacking Naruto, although this was just a test to see how powerful Naruto was, but also insulting not only Naruto, but Hinata as well, angering Naruto a lot, almost punching Sai, but holding himself back. If Naruto really punched Sai, he would have probably knocked him out or maybe even killed him. But Sai looked very wounded, as even though Naruto held back, his hair was pushed back by the shockwave of the punch alone. The next day, they set up on their mission, and that being to retrieve Sasuke. On the journey there, Naruto was getting a lot more annoyed by Sai, as the interaction often reminded him of the ones he had with Sasuke back in the day. And he was also often nonchalantly bringing up Sasuke's misdeeds, causing several almost punches by Naruto, but he always stopped himself. After arriving at the Tenchi Bridge, Kakashi quickly disguised himself to meet a spy, that being Kabuto. However, the technique binding Kabuto to Sasori, who Kakashi had disguised as, had been dispelled a long time ago, so Kakashi's attack wasn't able to land, and Kabuto was able to attack Kakashi, easily destroying the disguise. Orochimaru then called out to the rest of Kakashi's team and taunted Naruto by speculating who was not stronger, Naruto or Sasuke. The mere mention of Sasuke's name out of Orochimaru's mouth made Naruto's blood boil, and it seemed his eyes flickered red as he was slowly enveloped by an orange chakra. Quick recap. The last part, Naruto finally returned to the Leaf Village and met everyone again. Naruto then went to the Hokage office with Hinata, where he found Kakashi, and they did the second round of the bell test before moving on to the sand to retrieve Gara. In the sand, Naruto battled Deidara, while Hinata battled Sasori, with both of them winning their fights. Then Gara was revived, and they headed back. Now back on the Tenchi Bridge mission, and the fight with Orochimaru will soon begin. Now Naruto stood on the bridge as he clenched his fist so tightly that blood began to spurt out a little, but it was so quick as it was healed instantly, with steam coming out of it as orange chakra enveloped his hand, and suddenly Naruto flew toward Orochimaru, with his fist covered in an orange coat of chakra, with the rest of his body normal. When the punch connected with Orochimaru's face, the ground underneath him was completely destroyed, as Orochimaru was flung into the forest, completely destroying a part of it. Don't ever mention Sasuke's name again. I don't want to hear it out of your foul mouth. Naruto said, performing a few hand signs as he fired a water release, great waterfall technique, and he expelled an immense amount of water out of his mouth, which flew at Orochimaru so fast he wasn't even able to dodge. The water jutsu was so gigantic Naruto concentrated, it was able to destroy a good part of the forest, as Naruto was absolutely pissed. But even now, Naruto wasn't even close to using his full power, but it was hard not to. The bluish-white chakra was the only thing stopping him from completely losing his cool and killing Orochimaru, just completely destroying him. Still, Orochimaru was absolutely taken apart by this jutsu. As the jutsu slowly stopped, Orochimaru popped his head out of the water, desperate for a breath of fresh air, but Naruto just stood in front of him and smiled, before punching him right in the face, sending him flying once more, crashing into the ground, leaving a small crater there. As Orochimaru lay there, he felt a strong gust of wind, only to see it was Naruto, who was now right above him. But Orochimaru had enough. As the punch was flying at him, he turned into a snake and was able to get away in the brink of time. And when Orochimaru looked back, he was glad to have dodged this attack, as the area of effect of that single punch was so massive he still felt its shockwave from there. Back where Naruto was, all the energy around him dispersed as he walked back to his team, scratching the back of his neck a little. I think I overdid it a little, but when he saw the faces of his comrades, he knew he had really done so, as everyone looked at him as if they had never truly seen what he was. But then they realized something. Sai was no longer amongst them. It turns out Sai had approached Orochimaru about perhaps forming an alliance with Danzo after the former left, and that all goes the same as in canon. When Naruto asks where Sai is, Kakashi replies with, I'm not sure, but I know someone who is. Kakashi performed the summoning jutsu as a dog appeared in front of them, and, as it turns out, Kakashi had left a small dog after every one of them, in case they were in danger, so the small dog, who was with Sai, was able to reveal his location. So they ran quickly, as they could. There, as if what the dog was said was true, they could see Sasuke again there. When they arrived at the hideout, they searched through the rooms until finding a large open area, and on its wall stood Sasuke Uchiha, looking upon them as he suddenly blitzed toward Naruto. But Naruto didn't even dodge, as seeing Sasuke again wasn't at all what he had expected. He had hoped that Sasuke would just come back to the leaf with them, but Sasuke wasn't going to do that now. He will kill Itachi, and then he'll return to the leaf. Maybe. As Sasuke blitzed toward him, Naruto just stood still, as he thought Sasuke wanted to attack him. However, the latter just stood in front of him and asked, So, have you become the Hokage yet? But Naruto answered with seeming bags under his eyes, No. No one as pitiful as me could ever become the Hokage. Someone who can't even save a single friend. Please, just come back to the village, Sasuke. Sasuke scoffed at Naruto as he jumped back up again. He couldn't believe how weak-minded Naruto, his one and true rival, had become. In his eyes, Naruto might have just become more powerful, but he was inferior to the Naruto back then. That Naruto went through everything just to have a try to get him back, and when that didn't work, he fought him with everything he had. But now look at him. This Naruto was a weak imitation of the old one. Sasuke scoffed again, as he disappeared alongside Orochimaru with his last words to Naruto being weak. After all of this happened, the team finally went back to the Leaf Village, as now Naruto has very little to do in these two arcs, so all we'll say about them is that Naruto still develops the Rasen Shuriken, kills Kakuzu, etc. But as that all happens the exact same, we'll just get into the more interesting stuff. As Naruto got back from the fight with Kakuzu, he finally felt like he had achieved something. He had failed to bring back Sasuke. He was able to get Gara back, but even then, he had still needed help, really saving him. He failed to kill Orochimaru and once again failed to bring Sasuke back. Overall, his life was only failures right now, but now it was starting to look up. He'll definitely bring Sasuke back. As Naruto walked through the village, it seemed he had an extra spring in his step until suddenly being called to the Hokage office. Naruto thought he was going to be congratulated on his new victory, but that wasn't going to be the case. Not at all. As Naruto entered the room, it seemed to have a very gloomy atmosphere, which confused him. I mean, he had just done something great. In front of him, a small toad began to speak. You are the Naruto boy, correct? Naruto nodded, and the toad paused for a second before continuing. There's some important info I have for you. Jiraiya boy has perished in battle. Naruto still smiled as he laughed and said, "Ha! Good job, old toad. Jiraiya would never die. That was a good joke." Naruto still smiled as he laughed and said, "I'm still laughing, of course," saying, "You really have a good sense of humor." But he didn't see a single laughing face, so slowly his face dropped. Right? But the toad stayed silent. Suddenly, the entire village began to shake. Every single house, every street, everything in the entire village shook so hard that people were falling over all over the place. Who? Who killed him? The toad replied, Pain. Where is he? I will personally see to it that he is eliminated. Everyone in the room was filled with fear as Naruto's eyes turned blood red with three tomoe, but suddenly they transformed. As he closed his eyes because of a sharp pain in them, he slowly opened them only to reveal, instead of Tomoe, the Sharingan had a spiral within it. It seemed Naruto had awakened the Mangekyo Sharingan, but Naruto didn't care as he just stood there as the toad explained all about the secret message. As Naruto was a lot smarter and in general faster in the head in this, he was still easily able to figure out some clues to solving it, unlike the original. He had read all of the makeout tactic books for when he got back with Hinata, and when he got back to the village not too long ago, so it was still clear in his head and he also knew how Jiraiya wrote his ta, which the others thought was a 9. Told them this, then quickly left. Going back to his home, Naruto just lay down on his bed, not having the energy to do anything. He wanted Jiraiya back, but he was dead. He'd never forgive Pain. As Naruto was laying there, Shikamaru came to visit, and after having him meet the now pregnant Kurenai, told him to get his crap together so they can become the ninjas their sensei once were and surpass them. The next few days Naruto spent were full of hardcore training. Naruto did everything he could think of and pushed his body to the very limit. After finishing a very hard day of training, Naruto sat down to eat some ramen, as he wanted to treat himself a little. But then he was reverse summoned to Mount Miyaboku, leaving only a note from the old toad named Fokusaku, explaining that Naruto will be gone for a few weeks to master Sage Mode to defeat pain once and for all, and to master, say, a different power. So he would be preparing him for that. Now the training for Sage Mode began, but before this happened, Naruto was brought in front of the Master Toads and had a toad stuffed down his throat, which is absolutely disgusting. But let's move on. Naruto was first tasked with mastering Sage Oil's enhanced Sage Mode, which wasn't that difficult. Naruto was a prodigy in this type of training, and with the Otsutsuki bonus, it was nothing. But there was some mental fortitude required, not for the training, but for the food he had to eat there. Caterpillars, grasshoppers. Oh god, it was also disgusting, so why doesn't it taste that bad? The next days went on with him having mastered Sage Oil Enhanced Sage Mode, but had been very many close calls, with him almost succumbing to the massive power of Nature Chakra, which can, if you have not mastered it, turn you into the animal you're learning this type of Sage Mode from. In this case, it turned into a toad, which would also turn into stone. After Naruto mastered Sage Oil Enhanced Sage Mode, Fukasaku explained why Naruto couldn't just use this against pain. Sage oil is a natural oil which disappears outside of Mount Miyaboku, so taking it with you could be foolish, and then began to explain all about actual Sage Mode and how to control it, which made Naruto's head spin so much information, but he'd do his best to master it. The days began with him eating a well balanced breakfast of a caterpillar and 4 grasshoppers, then training began. First, there was a normal meditation training where he would often get hit on the head by Fukasaku, sorry about that, which would reset the natural energy in his body, but it would also hurt like crazy. After this meditation, he would do some balance training on top of a very spiky mountain, where if you made even the tiniest wrong move, you would fall down, but Fukasaku always caught Naruto with his tongue before he fell, which ghosted Naruto a little, but after having to eat bugs the entire day, he already saw it as a common occurrence. But for now, we'll skip ahead to when Naruto finishes training for Sage Mode. As Naruto fully completed his training, he left 3 clones behind for Sage Mode training, as he really needed a backup supply of nature energy. As Naruto heard what was going on in Konoha, he clenched his fist as he was reverse summoned back, making his entrance, staring right at Pain, whispering, I'll kill you. Part 8. Now, as always, I will have a quick recap of the previous part. Naruto and the rest of Team 7 had arrived on the bridge where Naruto began to absolutely destroy Orochimaru, with the latter leaving just in time, but then everyone noticed that Sai was gone, but Kakashi traced everyone's path with a little dog summoning. But when they arrived there, they finally met Sasuke again, who called Naruto weak before leaving once more. Coming back to the village, Naruto was informed about Jiraiya's death and began learning Sage Mode until finally arriving back to the village, ready to get revenge for his master. Now, as Naruto saw Pain, he clenched his fists, swearing to kill the man in front of him, and, out of nowhere, as one Pain flew at Tsunade, ready to kill her, Naruto stomped on his back, completely destroying the Pain in process. As Tsunade stared at Naruto, she gave a weak smile, but Naruto didn't smile back as he looked at Pain with an angry expression. You killed Jiraiya. I'll never forgive you, and flew toward the animal path, punching her head off with ease as he used the Gale Palm to blow away the other paths of Pain before flying at the human path with a Rasengan right to the head, finishing him off too. The leftover paths of Pain were in shock for a good second, with Naruto completely destroying them, but that second of shock was a big mistake for the paths of Pain, as Naruto threw a gigantic Rasen Shuriken at them, vaporizing every path except for the Diva path, which was able to, well, just barely, get away, but he was still horrified. But he quickly snapped out of it and began to talk to Naruto. You're destroying the peace this world has worked so hard to build. But Naruto scoffed at him while slowly walking toward him. This piece? This? He opened his arms, showing Pain the destruction he had caused. You killed Jiraiya sensei, you killed Kakashi sensei, and you call this piece? Don't make me laugh, you scum. Naruto ran toward Pain with so much anger flowing out of him that the Nine-Tails grasped the opportunity and started letting his chakra flow into him, to weaken the seal more and more. All this destruction you see here, all of this happened in my village, only that it was your village who did this. With each step Naruto took, he gained another tail, before suddenly going into the six-tail transformation, and slicing off the Path's head, before absolutely destroying its body with no mercy at all. Anyone watching what was occurring had to close their eyes or look away, as Naruto was completely pulverizing the body of Pain, before hitting the ground, making the ground shake, so much everyone was forced onto their knees. There was so much hatred flowing into Naruto, it was overpowering, but suddenly he felt a hand on his shoulder. Naruto's seal was about to break, but someone stopped him from destroying even more of the village than Pain had already done. That of course being Minato. Hello, Naruto. Minato told him with a smile as Naruto looked around confused. Who are you? And how do you know my name? I'm your father, Naruto. Naruto's eyes slowly widened as he completely turned around as Minato began explaining everything about the Nine-Tails attack back then, but Naruto just seemed to get angry as he just suddenly punched him in the gut. How could you steal the Nine-Tails in your own son? Do you know how much I've suffered while you were gone? But as he withdrew his hand, he hugged his father before Minato suddenly started to disappear. Oh, I didn't know I only had this much time. He had an incredibly sad look on his face, but quickly stretched his hand toward Naruto's stomach, where the seal had turned into a black mess, and reinforced the seal once more with the Nine-Tails scowling in the background. He said his last goodbye to Naruto. I believe in you, Naruto. You'll be the Hokage. Naruto wiped away his tears as he gave his signature smile and gave a thumbs up. I will, Dad. As Naruto returned back to the normal world, he felt another hand on his shoulder. It seemed that it wasn't just his imagination, as when he turned around, he was met by Hinata, who nodded at him, giving a thanks for helping her and everyone protect the village for good. But Naruto didn't have any time to chat, as when he came back from the mindscape, he quickly entered Sage Mode once more and walked toward one of the bodies of Pain, withdrew one of the black chakra rods, and stabbed himself in the palm, wheezing whilst doing so, but he was focused as Naruto wasn't going to let the man behind all of this get away with it. Out of nowhere, Naruto was suddenly flooded with a massive information about where Pain was, a quick look at his true appearance, and the way toward him. Before Naruto was able to fully get there, he was stopped by two Jonin. However, Naruto scoffed at them as they ran toward Pain's hideout. When Naruto finally arrived at the tree, he opened it up with such force the entrance was literally ripped off. As Naruto walked in, the entire area began to shake with so much force Nagato coughed up a little blood. Seeing Nagato, Naruto said, I'm holding back my rage, my fury. Give me the reason as to why you commit such atrocities. Nagato complied, telling Naruto his story, but Naruto, who had finally found an answer to his question, told him, "Do not end this curse. If there's truly a thing such as peace, then I shall grasp it. I'll never give up." Nagito realized where that line truly came from as Naruto held up the book Jiraiya had given him so long ago, telling Pain that he will achieve that true peace. Suddenly, Nagato's eyes widened as he realized the similarity between the legendary stage of Six Paths and the kid in front of him, which brought even Nagato to smile shortly as he clapping his hands together. I shall believe in you then. Nagato performed the rebirth, causing every soul that was taken from the leaf to be restored. As everyone slowly got up from the ground, Naruto smiled a little as he walked off back toward the leaf. Arriving back at the entire village stood in front of him, as they threw him into the air, cheering for him, with him laughing in happiness. As they don't quite care for it, I will be excluding all the filler episodes, especially the goddamn boat fillers, and moving straight on to when Naruto meets B. The first thing that Naruto tried was to use his sexy jutsu to convince B to train him, but that backfired with B just shutting the door in his face. And when Naruto tried to rap to gain his approval, B just closed the door once more. Although after some time he did finally accept the proposal given to him. As Killer B accepted the proposal, he fist bumped Naruto, which was just his signature style of befriending some people, as they went on to enjoy their day, as in the outside the Fourth Shinobi World War began. The next day, Naruto, Killer B, and Yamato went into the room where B explained all of the statues here were previous Jinchurikis, which all had their head chopped off by this thing right here. Also, if you expected me to write a rap, I'm sorry to disappoint. And went on to warn Naruto that, and if you're not deemed worthy, your head will be chopped off as well. Naruto gulped as he stuck his head in with a sudden clicking noise coming out of nowhere as Naruto came out with his head chopped off. No, no, this can't be happening, Yamato said with a scared look on his face and diluted pupils, but Naruto suddenly popped his head up again. Kidding, there's just a switch in there. And B laughed. I did the same thing when I did this for the first time too. And they fist bumped, although their joy was quickly interrupted by Yamato hitting them both in the head as they entered the mysteriously beautiful looking room. As they entered, Naruto looked around slightly confused by the room, but also fascinated. It was so strange, yet so beautiful. He'd never seen anything like it, although they had no time to waste, as Naruto sat down alongside B and Yamato as he and B bumped fists. As Naruto entered his headspace, but Naruto was met by the sight of the large fox. He was slightly taken aback by its astounding size, but there was no matter, as he got his act together and concentrated, going into sage mode before opening the seal. As Naruto, as soon as Naruto did so, the Ninetales opened the gate with full force, although Naruto just stood firm as he began battling the Ninetales with astounding ease, although he was hit by some attacks which stung immensely, but Naruto was confident that he could win, so he used his Rasen Shuriken and blasted the Ninetales away, gathering its chakra. Or at least that's what he thought, as he slowly began dragging not just the chakra, but also the hatred, the absolute despise the Ninetales had with it, as the screams of the tortured that the killed began screaming right in his head, as he wanted to shake it all away, as he slowly began transforming into the sixth-tailed state, although suddenly it was stopped, as Naruto entered a dimension he'd never seen before. It looked similar to the room he had just left, but where was he now? Before him stood a woman with red hair who smiled at him, telling him, "It's so nice to finally meet you, Naruto." Naruto shouted at her, calling her the Ninetales' true form, for which he was quickly hit over the head by Kushina, who, after saying Naruto recognized as his mother, embracing her. As they began talking, Naruto and Kushina finally made a plan to defeat the Ninetales together, as suddenly in the mindscape, chains erupted from Naruto as he was filled with a new motivation to defeat the Ninetales, which he did with relative ease, draining it from its chakras in the real world. Naruto was suddenly engulfed in a yellowish-orange chakra, which suddenly mixed with the calming blue aura, creating a pleasant shade of blue around him. Naruto had entered QB chakra mode. As always, we'll start off with a recap of the previous part. It all began with the act of pain destroying the village, where Naruto answered the screams for help with his new and very powerful Sage Mode. With the help of this and his brute force alone, he alone was able to destroy the pains and have Nagato finally see the light, as he then went on to attempt to master the power of the Ninetales, for which he had succeeded in entering QB Chakra Mode 1. Now in this final part, we see Naruto standing in the center of the room, the blue chakra having mixed with the orange, creating a pleasant shade of light blue, and the power coming from this was truly immense. He was giving off an entirely different aura, as suddenly Naruto felt the evil presence of Kisame, which the latter noticed quite quickly, trying to escape, although Naruto shouted, "Not on my watch," as he stomped right in the to the middle of Kisame, halving the monster with ease as he returned the sword back to B. Sadly, now we won't get the amazing scene with Guy, but at least we didn't have as much trouble as in the original. Having fixed this problem with relative ease, Naruto gave a big smile toward B and Yamato as he said, "I did it." Then walking out of the room with B quite happy, talking to him, telling him about some of the consequences of the form, and Yamato smiling weakly as well, with Naruto deactivating his KCM for now. But when they got out, to not only Naruto and B's shock of course, they were met by several elite Leaf Ninja, although one stood out to Naruto, a Chunin with long brown hair tied back into a ponytail. "Iruka-sensei? What are you doing here?" Iruka scoffed a little. "We're here to keep you safe, Naruto. Just stay here for a while, okay?" Naruto was confused as he laughed a little. "What do you mean, keep me safe? There's nothing going on. I want to go back to the Leaf Village and show them this new power." But Iruka just stretched out his hands, and so did the elite ninja behind it, blocking his path. And Naruto's expression fell a little. "You really think you all can hold me down?" A sudden immense wind pressure forced all of them onto their knees as Naruto just blitzed past them, even without his KCM, as he activated his Sage mode, trying to sense where the Leaf Village was from here, but he was met by a quite different sensation. Death. Sorrow. What the hell was going on? Naruto turned around, furious as he shouted, "What's going on out there?" with Iruka just looking to the side, almost like he was a bit ashamed. "What's going on out there?" "We are only here to keep you safe, Naruto. You shall not enter the war." Iruka's eyes widened a bit as he knew he had just revealed some critical information to Naruto, whose face dropped. "You dare keep me here whilst people are dying outside? In a war?" Iruka still looked ashamed as he walked up to Naruto. "You are the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails, Naruto. You're too valuable to send out there." Iruka sneaked something into his pocket, but Naruto was too fierce to notice as he stared right back into his eyes. "I'm the only one who can stop this war, and I will," and instantly activated his KCM once more as he and B, who had sneaked by, rushed toward the barrier, with Iruka smiling a little as Naruto broke the barrier with a single punch as he and B went through the barrier. Breaking it, he was instantly met by Tsunade and the Red Kage. "Naruto, B, you shall not pass past this point." Tsunade and the Raikage stood almost perfectly in sync, but Naruto didn't care as he just walked past. "I will say this again. I'm the only one who can stop this all, and I will be the one to do so." B nodded with a big smile as he began walking quite a bit behind Naruto. As Naruto passed the Raikage, having already deactivated his KCM, the Raikage flew at him after shouting, "If you don't back down, I will be forced to kill you," with Tsunade just standing there in shock. But Naruto just continued walking with the Raikage slowly speeding up. "You are just like your father, a hot-headed idiot." Naruto stared at him, stopping in his tracks, seeing the Raikage say this, as he clenched his fist, entering Sage Mode once more. "You dare insult my father?" With the Raikage just scoffing, as Tsunade stood back, not being able to act as in Naruto's favor, as she was the Hokage after all. "Yes, I do." The Raikage was definitely still under the impression he was stronger than Naruto, but Naruto just began walking once more, as he didn't want to hurt a Raikage, as he did respect them. But the Raikage saw this blatant ignoring of his word to be highly insulting, as he flew at Naruto with his max speed and lightning cloak. But Naruto just scoffed, dodging him, not even using KCM, and ran off with his last words to the Raikage being, "Too slow." With Beast staying back, finally managing to convince A of Naruto's importance in the war, with the Raikage beginning to laugh a little. "That boy's got some nerve, doesn't he?" With B laughing and nodding, then beginning to run after Naruto. Back to Naruto, he crossed his fingers, making a plus with them, as suddenly clothes began pouring out in every direction as Naruto smelled it, as he shouted, "I'll save all of you," as he began running off into the direction where he had sensed most of the danger. Switching to the first clone, the clone landed right in front of the previous Raikage as he brushed some dirt off his shoulder. "Let this fight begin," the clone said, smiling wildly whilst the other clones were killing white Zetsus all around, making sure every single one that had transformed into a human-like appearance was found out. This clone just stood right in front of the third Raikage with a big smile as he kicked the Raikage right into a rocky mountain, completely annihilating the left arm of the Raikage to everyone's shock, although it quickly grew back. Although Naruto didn't stop there, as he formed a Rasen Shuriken, jumping toward the third Raikage, just hitting him around the ribcage with it, as it annihilated the Edo Tensei completely. But to his dismay, the Raikage just formed back. This was truly something else. Naruto jumped back as he asked the man with the covered Byakugan, "Old man, do you know anything about him?" The latter was a bit offended at being called an old man, as he himself thought himself as quite young, but told Naruto all he knew, and Naruto nodded, giving him a thanks as he quickly blitzed toward the Raikage, using a well-placed punch to have his left arm go directly into the wound that had been placed on him by the Eight Tails, with the third Raikage smiling. "Your strength is truly incredible, young man. Never forget to use it for the good of everyone," with Naruto smiling as he gave a thumbs up promising this. Skipping ahead to more important stuff for the story, Naruto just escaped from the mouth of the Four Tails, managing to befriend the tail beast before it was dragged into the Gedamaza. However, this fueled nothing except for his resolve and anger, as he stood in front of all the tail beasts, ready to extract rods from them no matter what. The cost was. However, Naruto was suddenly drawn into the headspace, where he was met by Kurama, who greeted him with a smile for once. As he wordlessly stretched out his fist to Naruto, he smiled as he fist bumped with Kurama, telling him, whilst he was opening the cage between the two, "You are no longer the demon fox, the Ninetales." The door swung open as the Ninetales clapped his hands together. "You are Kurama, the Leaf Village," and Naruto clapped his hands together as well, as they both screamed at the threats in front of them, with the resolve being felt through the entire area of the war, as Naruto's cloak began to grow, as a cloak was forming, and Naruto began walking toward all the other tail beasts, as they all blasted at them with tail beast bombs, but Naruto just flicked them away with these. "Sensei?" Kakashi said, not being able to believe his eyes. Although then he had realized who the man in front of him was. It was not his sensei. It was the boy who he had helped raise and form to the man in front of him, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto quickly got all of the rods from the tailed beast so fast only the Mangekyo Sharingan could keep up with his movements, as he threw them all to the ground, standing next to Kakashi and Guy, as they were both currently fighting against the masked man, whose power was truly immense. Now, Naruto could, of course, far surpass his power with his KCM2. However, there was the issue of his reaction speed being far above Naruto's with the Sharingan and Rinnegan, so he was able to react to all of Naruto's attacks with ease, using his own power to face through the attacks. However, with the combined effort of Kakashi realizing their Kami attacks were connected, and Naruto's raw power, they were able to break the mask, revealing the person behind everything. The war, the capturing of the tail beast. Obito Uchiha stood in front of them, with a serious expression painted on his face. Kakashi was shocked to the core, but Obito stayed silent as he suddenly jumped onto the Gezomazo, with Madara as he formed all the residual chakra of the 9 and 8 tails, with all of the other tail beast chakra, creating the dreaded 10 tails. Naruto, Kakashi, and Guy fell back for a second to heal their injuries, although they were all shocked by the sudden revelation of the ten tails in front of them. Although Naruto didn't have any time to rest, suddenly the ten tails began forming a gigantic tailed beast ball, flinging it right toward everyone. Naruto quickly stood up, although he sensed the presence of a familiar chakra as he smiled widely, sitting back down as the tailed beast bomb disappeared with someone appearing right in front of him. "Dad!" Minato smiled at him, asking, "Is that your girlfriend?" as Hinata was healing him, with Naruto nodding and Hinata blushing heavily, although she nodded a bit as well. They had a quick reunion, with Minato giving them his blessing, although Minato sadly only having the power that he had in the original after having given most, if not all of his power, to the boy in front of him, made him not as important to the story as he could have been. But that was of no matter, as when he looked at Naruto, he knew that this was the choice that he had to make, and that it was the correct choice, as that Naruto would soon be able to access this power. As Naruto walked up to his father, they both entered KCM2, ready to face the battle in front of him. Mostly everything went like in the original with the reunion of Team 7, just that it was Hinata instead of Sakura, and Obito becoming the Ten Tails. All was going become the ten tails in Turkey, of course. All was going like it did in the original, but something was quite different, as instead of being heavily overpowered, Naruto, with the help of Sasuke, was able to far surpass the enemies in front of them as they performed the majestic attire onto the Nine Tails, as they flew at the Ten Tails Shinchuriki Obito quickly, and were easily cutting off the tail beast from him with their combined power. But this was not the end. as Madara used all of the tail beasts, making him into the next Ten-tailed Jinchuriki once more, which he absorbed into himself, become the Ten-tailed Jinchuriki. Jubidara had retrieved his Rinnegan from the almost dead Obito as he cast the Infinite Tsukuyomi, which had almost caught Naruto off guard, but Sasuke was, well, just barely, able to drag him and Kakashi and Hinata into a Sasano, stopping them from getting captured by the Genjutsu. But this was nowhere the end of it, as Madara blitzed up to them, and using the power of the Rinnegan quickly extracted a large amount of chakra from Naruto, with Naruto not even being able to notice it after walking out of the Sasano, with him dropping to the ground as he began dying. As not only had he extracted a good amount of Naruto's chakra, buffing Madara extremely, he was also able to take his half of the Night Tails, and when Sasuke tried to help, he was stabbed right through the heart by Madara, who just stood there smirking at Kakashi and Hinata before jumping back, attempting to cast the Genjutsu on those two as well, though right now something was happening. The Sage of Six Paths stood in front of Naruto and Sasuke in their mindscapes, as he explained the reincarnation to them, as they both received a half of the Sage of Six Paths chakra, with Naruto just barely receiving the half of the Nightals from Minato in time, while Hinata focused on healing Sasuke, as Naruto's healing factor could keep him alive for a bit. Suddenly Naruto stood up along with Sasuke, and as soon as Madara began to laugh, as they did that, Madara began to laugh. Good, good. This battle will be incredible. As he dashed toward them, but instead of going for either Naruto or Sasuke, he did the logical thing, that being to take down their hero first. As Madara flew at her, Naruto was astounded how quickly this happened, and was shocked to the ground. And when he finally was able to move again, he saw Madara beating Hinata senselessly, with her nose becoming bloody and her face swelling up. As Madara flew into the air once more, after Hinata had fully passed out, with her not at all recognizable. Now it'll be a true fight. Naruto scoffed as he clenched his fist in anger, as he noticed how Black Setsu was heading up to kill Madara whilst Madara wasn't paying any attention toward him. The moment where Black Setsu attempted to stab Madara through the heart, Naruto flew up, dropkicking Black Setsu to the ground, crumbling it all over as he said, "This is my battle. I'm going to kill him, not you, scum," Naruto said as he punched Madara in the face, sending him flying to the ground, where Sasuke combined attacks with Naruto as he kicked Madara up, with Madara slowly swelling up as the chakra of Kaguya was attempting to take control. But Naruto and Sasuke didn't notice at first, as they were beating Madara, breaking bones and spilling blood with their full power, as they were both no longer playing around. The moment that did, Naruto and Sasuke used their full power as they blitzed toward Kaguya, firstly kicking him to the ground, making an almost meteor-sized impact, and sealing her away, as they had no time to deal with her, as they both knew this was the day where their entire and eternal battle must end. Kakashi was surprised as he quickly ran over to where Black Zetsu was, as he shouted at Naruto, who took off Black Zetsu from Obito, who was laying in critical condition but not dead, as Naruto flung Black Zetsu into the planetary devastation, sealing him away, and Kaguya away for good. Dusted off. Naruto dusted off his shoulder, as all the Kage suddenly appeared around them, with the dead Kage as well, with Minato and the other Hokage smiling widely at Naruto. Even Tobirama was smiling a bit, as Naruto spoke with Minato for the last time as he began crying, telling him all about his life, and telling him that, "I'll become the Hokage, Dad." To which Minato nodded with a smile as he told him, "I'm sure you will." As he disappeared, but this story obviously wouldn't end on such a high note, as Sasuke Genjutsu then sealed away all the tailed beast, as he and Naruto headed toward the final valley, where their final clash began. Now Naruto was obviously much stronger than Sasuke, even in his base he scaled above him, but Naruto didn't care, as he didn't even activate KCM as he stared down Sasuke, telling him once more, "I'll become the Hokage," as he pointed toward his heart, then pointed toward Sasuke. "And save you," with a smile, as Sasuke just scoffed, with Naruto saying, "Because you're my friend," and the battle began. Naruto and Sasuke's battles switched from their normal fighting to gigantic mecha battles almost, where Naruto had to pull out KCM Sage Mode and more to stop Sasuke's attack and counter, but quickly stop his use of it, as he just fought with Sasuke. He obviously didn't want to kill him, for a day at least by hand. Both ended up exhausted by the end of the fight. Naruto had much more chakra still, but even as Sasuke made his final Chidori, using some of Naruto's chakra, buffing it extremely, Naruto didn't even flinch as his right arm was cut right off as he blocked his vitals with it, but pulled Sasuke in a hug with his left. "It's all over now. There's no use for this anymore. To which Sasuke began to sob alongside Naruto, Hinata, and Kakashi, the latter two had came here just a few minutes ago, as they all hugged, with Naruto and Hinata smiling at Sasuke for once. Sasuke smiling back. We skip ahead some years into the future as the front door to a huge ceremony opened, as in stepped Naruto with Hinata, both amazingly dressed, with Naruto preferring to keep his old haircut, even having it a bit longer, similar to Minato, as Hinata looked the same as in the original, as they walked up toward the stand. As they walked, they saw Sakura and an unknown man, Inosai, and more people, but the most important people were up at the front. As a red-haired woman with a big smile stood there clutching the arm of a dark-haired man. These were Sasuke and Karin, who ended up together, as behind them stood Obito and Kakashi, who were both Naruto's two best men, alongside Sasuke, as Naruto chose Sasuke to, of course, be his best man. While Hinata and Karin had become good friends, so she had become her bridesmaid. As the priest began to speak, Naruto smiled, and after the priest ended his speech off, Naruto said, "I do," while staring into Hinata's eyes and giving a thumbs up to Sasuke, Kakashi, and Obito, who all smiled as well. Now, I hope you all enjoyed the movie of What If Naruto Was no Otsutsuki. It took a long time for me to make this because of so many breaks, etc. But now it's finally done. So this was Tenitzu, and I am out for a while.